back to the Writers of Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Stafford. Thank you for listening. Thank you for returning if you're an old listener. Thank you for tuning in for the first time if you're a new listener. Tuning in, God, shows how old I am. Sorry for the break. I've been under the pump, as they say. I've been teaching. I've been completing a redesign at UX Content Collective. Check it out if you are so inclined. So it has taken me a little while to get the next episode up, but your wait, I believe, will be rewarded. So I'm not going to prattle on for too long here. Suffice to say, I'm speaking with someone who I think is one of the more impressive voices in the field right now, an optimistic voice. I'm speaking today with Oleksii Tkachenko. And Oleksii, I think, has a really great perspective about where the industry is going. He has a software development background, which I think informs a lot of his takes on what's happening in the industry. He's sort of viewing the change through both sides as a former developer and now as a designer. So I think he has a lot of good words for us all here, both in what is changing and also what we can do about it. And I think he also raises some pretty interesting questions about if we are so willing to give up some of the design process with AI, did we ever really like design in the first place? It's a good question to ask. So we talk about that today. And I just think he's a fantastic voice. He has experience across a number of companies, Klarna, Perk. He just recently spoke at the Growing in Content conference, and I came away pretty energized after what we discussed. So I think you will too. So I'll let it there. Thank you for listening. And as always, if you want to invest in your content design career, head over to uxcontent.com. You get 20% off anything with the code podcast20 and check out the redesign while you're at it. All right, here's my chat with Oleksii Tkachenko. 50 pounds heavier. But I think what's the biggest difference in like the Eastern European culture versus like London? Because I've been to London and I can sort of compare against like Australia and America, so I sort of understand that it's kind of like those three places are kind of like a sort of like a weird mixture of everything. Are there any big cultural differences that you notice?
I think not as many as people would expect, actually. Like something I constantly get is that the humor is very similar, for instance, in Ukraine, like in Eastern Europe,
Really?
and in UK. Yeah, I think it's it's true. It's very similar. Also, like it's not just about London, because when I lived in Stockholm, I've noticed that people are talking about like people being like closed, for instance. Like it takes time to get to understand the person on the inside, because at first, I think it's very similar as well for Eastern Europe and London. I think the thing is that London is a melting pot of so many cultures that for me personally, I feel like I don't feel such a big difference here, because first of all, I meet so many Eastern Europeans and Ukrainians as well, but also I think the culture in London maybe is not like represented fully. Like it's not like I can say what is the big difference between culture in Ukraine and in the UK. I don't think I can truly say, but in terms of London, I feel like it's very similar. It's very similar.
That's nice in a way.
Yeah.
Because, it feels a little bit like home, but not too far. But Stockholm, I've had friends who live there, and I all I've heard about is, it's nice, but it's just bureaucratic. And like, if you're from outside of Sweden, then it's just a nightmare to get settled and
you have all these stories that I kind of lived through when you arrive to the country, and the first days you need your bank account to be open. But to open a bank account, you need like a personal number. But they won't give you a personal number without the phone number. But to get a phone number, you need a bank account. And you're like, okay, what is this vicious cycle? I don't understand how it works. That was really funny. But I'd say, to be honest, like to be fair, I think bureaucracy in the UK is quite similar. I wouldn't say it's such a big difference between Sweden and in the UK. But for me, both are challenging, because in Ukraine, we are quite like digital. Like we even have an app that has your digital passport and everything there. So for me to go from that to, for instance, go into the separate web portal that has your electronic visa and there is no app to show it, that's kind of a bummer. Like it's a bit inconvenient. So both countries for me a bit challenged in terms of bureaucracy, but I was kind of expecting that. I think bureaucracy is a thing everywhere.
Yeah, good opportunity for content design. But we'll sort of leave that to the side.
Exactly.
I'm really happy to finally be talking to you in person, or at least through a screen. We've talked a little bit. You've written for us at UXCC, and I think at the moment there are a collection of content designers who I think are uh, on the forefront, experimenting, talking about important things and important changes that are happening. There are several. I think you're one of them, and I think that you're a good voice to have at the minute because things are changing so quickly, and especially this year. I think even in the past maybe 6 months, things have accelerated really quickly. It just feels overwhelming. And I feel like the content designers have we've gotten past the initial hump of feeling like our profession might be disappearing and going away. We've waited a few years. It's still here. It still exists, but the form in which it takes is really changing. And I feel like you have a unique perspective on that. I don't know. Does it feel scary to you, or you feeling energized? What are you thinking at the minute?
I think, first of all, it feels scary every time I open LinkedIn. And I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that's not a real place. It doesn't exist. Like, whatever you see on
100%.
LinkedIn, I'm sorry
Yep.
if you like, for instance, LinkedIn, but it's a place where, like I saw recently, there was a post for someone, like a designer was posting about how Figma now allows AI agents and it's going to change everything. And it's going to be so much better than using, let's say, Claude and connecting it all together, because now AI agents will have full access to your visual system, blah, blah, blah. And then in 45 minutes, this same person, which is actually cool on his side, that he came back to the post and he made a comment saying like, oh, I tested it. And he's like, actually, doing it on Figma side took 6 minutes more and everything is inconsistent and really bad. So like,
Right. Yeah.
What if you saw only the post and didn't see the comment?
Exactly.
I think you would really feel quite threatened and overwhelmed. I think it's understanding that LinkedIn is not a real place makes me feel much better, but also understanding that it's kind of a matter of choice for you right now. Like, it's a place where you can choose which direction you will be growing as a content designer. Like, for instance, I don't know, I don't remember what prior background you have before UX writing content design, but like I was originally from software engineering. But interesting thing is, I don't like software engineering. That's why I'm in content design. Like, I had a diploma, I left, and I was like, you know what? Design is a much more like interesting place for me. I'm gonna go to UX or something like that. And I've always had this thing like for design. I love it. I like working with UX and design overall. And now I see an opportunity for content designers to be much more involved, even more than before, in the design direction. So like even having more opportunities to experiment with prototyping and prompting things and showing real working things to someone, it's great. And for me, that's the direction. But for someone, maybe you or someone else would be like, actually, software engineering is really exciting and I want to be more involved with making changes in code and be more like working with engineers. That's also kind of open for you as well right now, thanks to AI. So I think it's more exciting than scary. And I think it's very often very scary for people who maybe don't find the proper direction for themselves. Like maybe they don't like design as a thing, like the visual part of design. They don't like the coding. Then kind of sounds like, what is the place? What is the new place for you? Because I think generalists will still be a thing, but it's going to be less opportunities for them, for those who like that. And I think it's going to be similar, like, someone still uses Sketch, but for you to find a company that uses Sketch and not Figma, maybe it's going to be quite challenging. So I think it's going to be the same for those who cannot choose really the direction they like. And even though it's scary, I think it should also feel kind of freeing. Maybe someone understands that the new direction that content design takes is not something they like doing anymore and they can choose something else. Like, I know it's easy to say, like, I know definitely I know how it's not easy to maybe say no to the career you already built for a while, but it could be a good thing if you really don't feel like where content design is going is fun for you anymore.
Yeah.
Because I still want my job to be fun. I still want my job to be interesting. I don't want my job to be dreadful every day, 9 to 5, like going to code if I don't like doing that, or doing more design if I always loved doing content, like only text input and something related to texts. So yeah, that's maybe what's given me hope, even though it might not have sounded like very exciting and refreshing for someone. I don't know.
Well, I think you raised a lot of good points there. And first of all, it's interesting that you moved from software engineering into design. Usually, it can sometimes happen the other way
Yeah,
around.
yeah,
So I'll come back to that. But I think there's a little bit of a mourning period going on because I think you're exactly right. I think we're grasping with the fact that the industry as it was, or the profession or the job as it was, is not going to be the same going forward. And I actually recently, I don't know if I'll publish it. I'm still deciding, but I wrote a blog post recently, and this might be a little of a long drawn analogy, but bear with me. When I remember when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time one afternoon building a Lego spaceship, and I was really proud of it. And it was awesome. And it had an escape pod, and it was like a mix of an X Wing and a whole bunch of other stuff. Super happy. And my brother accidentally broke it, not on purpose, but it sort of smashed. And I remember my dad was upset, and he was telling my brother to put it back together. And nor I or my brother could put it back together because I couldn't exactly remember how it was, and it wasn't like it was kind of close, but not quite there. And what I had was still cool, but something different. And I kind of feel like that the we're sort of looking at content design in the same way. It's like we had this really cool Lego spaceship that we'd built over decades, and then AI has come and it's smashed it, and now we're sort of trying to put it back together. And we're in the process of putting it back together. And what you're left with for a lot of people, you might look at it and you go like, I don't want this. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And yeah, I think people are really grappling with that.
I love that analogy actually. And to add to that, I also something my analogy will also be maybe it's going to be a reach, but when my first job, I worked at my first like copywriting job. My originally first job was customer service. So that's where like kind of where I learned that UX costs money, and if customer is unhappy, it's bad. But after that, like the first copywriting job was there was a company, I think it still exists in Ukraine, called Template Monster, which was like a competitor to Envato. And I remember working on blog posts and stuff, but also helping out with copies for templates that Template Monster released. And basically, it was like templates for WordPress. Everything was more web than apps back then. And I remember shifting to the times where like every company has to have an app, like a big company, or maybe new products that were just the app, no website at all, or like only landing page. And I remember copywriters actually doing UX writing before. And then when the apps came by, everyone was quite confused about like how everything now has to be short, and like there is no place for creativity, and there is no ownership actually, because so many copywriters owned whole sections on the website, or maybe whole templates, whole websites, and everyone was confused about that. But the thing is, it kind of gave, I'm not saying that was the moment where UX writing was born, but it was the moment where the much bigger market was created for that, and the job was kind of being redefined. And that's the same as we have now. I just think there will be a moment where everyone who is confused or like scared will understand that more like a new job being created. Maybe it's going to be called differently, which is also like something I wanted to touch on. Like I see some companies calling their content design position something like AI content designer. I think I saw
Hmm.
Vice doing that and someone else. or like AI conversational designers. I saw like Barclays, a few more companies, Skyscanner, searching for those. So I feel like that's already kind of showing to us that it is a new job. It's a bit of a different job, and like copywriters still exist. They do something different maybe, or there are UX writers who are not really shifting to content design fully and work on something more like what they did before. So for me, it's kind of also like something I remember from that shift. People were scared and confused and thought it's over for them, but it was just a bit of a redefining moment for where is the border between copywriting, content owning, like content strategy, and something that is closer to design. I think it's just kind of the same.
I think you are unique in that you have that software engineering background, so and a design background as well, and a writing background, so you can understand this moment with a lot of different perspectives. And if you take a look at, if you sort of peek into what people are posting on Reddit or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, and I think this is happening to every profession, so it's not just content design. And I know software engineers are dealing with it as well. It's sort of throwing everyone's roles up in the air. I want to go back to what you just said though about job ads and what people are
Mhm.
looking for, because you mentioned that you have had a look at some job ads recently, and you kind of get a sense for what people are looking for. I don't know if you saw, but recently someone on LinkedIn posted this analysis of 100 content design job ads. And I'll post the link in the show notes, and
Mhm.
I'll send it to you. It's really cool. And he basically analyzed what people are looking for and the types of skills they're looking at. And AI, it was funny because in that post he says only, 52% of job ads are asking for AI skills. And it was funny because I thought, oh, that's actually really high.
Yeah.
I thought that if half of all the job ads right now
You're
are
like,
asking for
only?
AI skills, yeah, I was like, that's actually, to me, like, think of any other technology within that short amount of time that has people asking for it. There's not very many. Um, so I'm just wondering, from your experience of looking at the market right now and looking at those ads, what sort of sense do you get of what people are looking for and what are they putting a value on?
I think I will kind of divide it into three buckets. The first bucket will be obviously the companies that are like fully AI exploration mode, that you will see in the job ads that they are looking for someone who is not just AI curious, but like has experience building systems related to AI, have experience maybe building internal tools that can produce some sort of content or maybe tie the guidelines into it and stuff like that, and help the design team to work better. They're looking for someone who has experience like automating some parts of the workflows. And obviously there are companies who like sometimes their product is fully based on like AI interactions. So they would be looking for the person who has AI conversational design skills, which is funny because I often saw job ads where it's like you have an extensive experience working with AI conversational design. And I think since the industry jumps so fast right now, it makes us feel like it's been around for so many years. But in my opinion, extensive experience in AI conversational design, we're still not at the point where people have that extensive experience. Like I cannot walk in and say, I'm doing that for 5 or 8 years.
Mm,
But there is a feel in the industry that it's already enough to say like, oh, you work on that for like 2 years. That's what we're looking for. It's already extensive because we'll move so fast. Another bucket will be which is kind of maybe less stressful for many people. These jobs still exist where companies post that they just want you to be kind of curious about AI. So you come on board, they don't have many AI tools used, or like they're just starting doing that. They don't have anything automated in terms of workflows, but they want you not to be like fully anti-AI, but being on board with the future innovation within the company. They want to be on board with like to be curious about like investigating what can be done with that technology. And I think it's a really good bucket of jobs because that's where you'll be at the very beginning of the change, and you will be able to sort of dictate how it's going to happen. And the third bucket will be also a fun one. There are still many companies who underutilize AI. I would say they don't really mention it in the job ad. Like I had a few interviews, and it often happens to big companies, like big bank that has like a 100-year history, and you understand that they're successful. But like I talked to one, and I was asking about how to use AI, and they were like, yeah, like we don't have a certain policy or like a certain tool that is being enforced or something. We are experimenting. And like one PM said, like, yeah, I'm like the person who really likes tinkering around with that and experimenting, but we don't have a policy that coming on board, you definitely have to work with this. So like they're kind of lagging behind, which is fine. And there are like enough companies like that for now, but it's mostly companies who are very slow and they're just too big. And because of how big they are, they're kind of slow. So I think considering that we have like 3 buckets of job ads, kind of actually sounds very positive that we have a choice for now. But again, to be fair, like with each bucket, I think you have to remember it's less options. Like the first bucket, definitely the biggest one, like the companies that want to make sure they utilize AI at maximum capacity, like as many workflows are automated as possible, internal tools being built. The next bucket is smaller, where it's like you just need to be curious about this. And the last bucket is the smallest one, where they're just behind. They will catch up, but not so fast. So it's like less opportunities in those buckets.
It's funny. I had a meeting with someone the other day, and they were saying, I feel really overwhelmed and I don't know how to keep up, because they see all sorts of posts on LinkedIn and Twitter and all sorts of things talking about the latest thing. And it's always like, 1 month, everyone's going out and buying Mac minis to start an open claw, or the next minute people are following, what's his name, Kapathi, on Twitter, and he's posted something new, and now we've all got to rush over here and do that, and it's like a hive of bees, like we're sort of like flying to the next thing all at once, and it can be super overwhelming. And I sometimes catch myself doing that. I'll look at a post and I'll be like, oh wow, I really should really look at that, and you sort of dive into it, and then you kind of have to take a step back and think, like, so what? Like, okay, so this technology is cool. So what? Like, what's the actual use case? I know for personally, like, people talk about like OpenClaw a lot and creating their own like agents running on like a mini machine. I haven't really seen that many cases for it in the wild. I saw one guy who was posting and he was saying like, "Oh, I do this, and then I have a report sent to me about my calendar every day," and I'm like, I just opened my Google Calendar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not like dismissing like what he's doing or whatever. Like, it's really cool, but I think people are getting really confused between what is cool and what is novel, and that's very interesting. But versus what is actually useful in your day to day work. You know what I mean?
Yes. I agree. And I think I saw some. Well, first of all, that's also the reason why I stopped going to Twitter, because everything, like one minor change in the model released from Claude, from Anthropic, is already, everyone is like breaking. Now you can, and then like a list of 55 things you can do, which not all of them really make sense. And I think it's like the whole idea, for instance, having the agent on a separate device doing stuff for you is really cool. But at the same time, like I also saw those situations where the person is like, and it creates a oh yeah, I saw, that's my favorite thing. So I was browsing TikTok, and I don't know what's happening exactly. I think there was a lot of negative coverage around Copilot and Microsoft, how they're trying to like basically put it everywhere they can. Obviously, because they need to make sure that the adoption is high. And I think I've seen right now more and more regular ads for like a person who is not even in tech to showcase how it can be used and how useful it is for your like day-to-day job, day-to-day life, even I would say. And there was this really funny commercial from Microsoft on TikTok where this person is like, "Oh, I just had a letter coming into my inbox. about like a brief for a project that I need to do, and she shows the screen, and it's like a set of bullet points, really easy to read actually. And she's like, "I'm just going to use Copilot, and it's going to help me summarize this." And basically, the next screen is a summary with no bullet points, and it's like 2 paragraphs of text. Yes, it's a bit shorter, but it's not easier to understand what is the project. And I was so confused because I was like, you actually made it worse. And I think many people are over engineering it because I think many companies, like for instance, they would make sure that they I don't want to say enforce, but highly encourage to use AI everywhere you can. And I think there is kind of a fear that you have to do this, and people are over engineering the solutions that can be made with that. So I definitely see that, and it makes me not like overwhelmed. It's more like it makes me kind of sad because I think, like time is wasted for that, and like compute is wasted for that, and it's used to something that is not really useful. But the person who made it wants to definitely stand out and showcase that now my OpenClaw or whatever is sending me to my Telegram a list of things I have to do, and it's like 5 of things that you will not really do. It's just like you need to sit down and make a to-do list, and it's going to be much better. So I definitely see that, and I'm not even sure, to be honest. Like, I'm not sure what's more scary for me: the fact that the over engineering is happening at jobs as well, or the fact that some companies are like trying to make sure that AI is like the adoption rate is higher for day-to-day life for regular people outside of tech, and it's also a lot of over engineering there. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. Maybe that's the point where I can say this thing scares me because sometimes it's just a waste of time and a waste of compute.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think we're in it's a weird one because this isn't like Bitcoin or NFTs or something where the day-to-day use for most people is not there. You can talk to anyone on the street and they'll tell you they'll use AI. So it's definitely broken that barrier. At the same time, I just straight up just do not believe all of the hype that comes out of the mouths of these CEOs. There was a piece in the New Yorker that was just published about Sam Altman, basically calling him a pathological liar, right? And you see all these stories about how this model is too dangerous to release, and I just have to roll my eyes, and I'm like, really? Like we've heard this for years now, and and so yeah, there's all that involved, and I just think for content specifically, I think like we really have to get down to what is it that the core of content design is about? Like what is it really about? It is about creating experiences for the user that give the right information at the right time. If these types of tools enable that, whatever that looks like for you, that's great. And I actually think that the opportunity here is so fantastic because if everyone can design with AI, text becomes a differentiator. Craft and design and taste become a differentiator. So if the tools can enable that and enable you to do that, then that's wonderful. But it does require a little bit of thought on everyone's behalf to just sit there and think, okay, what's the most valuable thing that I can do with my time with these tools? Maybe that is creating an internal tool where you can create a library of strings that reduces your delivery time. Great. Maybe that's a tool that enables designers to create text for themselves for their own designs. Great. I think it looks different everywhere. And where someone is selling a one size fits all solution or something, or like a killer idea that's going to really transform your organization. I don't know. I just think it always pays to be skeptical of those sorts of things.
I mean, first of all, back to the point about CEOs, like my favorite thing is how every 6 months, I remember the guy from Anthropic, what's his name? Like he's saying that in 6 months, software engineering is going to be dead. And my like every time I see someone repost it, I'm like, look, I don't have anything against the guy, but the thing is, it's his product and he needs to advertise it. And
He's
obviously
selling.
he's gonna be, and there's nothing bad about it. He has to sell his product and there is nothing, it's fine. But at the same time, why would you believe everything the person is saying, considering that it's actually like the benefit for the company? I think, like in terms of even tools that can help you maybe with some ad hoc content needs or like help you solve some content challenges. Something I wanted to also touch on is that maybe it's kind of related to the whole problem we had the whole time since the UX writing / content design thing. And since we've been always talking about this whole seat at the table thing and explaining to someone what we do, to stakeholders and so on, like I had experience developing an internal tool for a company where the tool was basically creating ad hoc content based on the guidelines that were properly linked to this tool. And the idea was that it's going to be only something quick, not something strategic. And why? Because if you just give that tool to, let's say, a PM, like something I very often see, PM has the context about how the product works, but they are always so biased in terms of how they see the internal side of like how the product works. They do think about the users, but they mostly think about how the user, like how many users will be interacting with this and what's going to be the end benefit, but they don't think through the interaction itself. So for instance, very often I saw, let's say one of the examples, like there was a payment related product and the PM was constantly, like even the internal name for the product was super unrelated to what the user is doing. Like for the user, they have no idea what it is if you tell them how it's called, because it's related to how we talk to our supplier, like how we partner with our supplier. It's an internal name. And based on that name, the PM gives that name of the project, explains how it works under the hood, and gets the content suggestions from AI. And it's absolutely different from what I would ask from AI, from a tool, what I will explain, what kind of context I will give, and what kind of content it will give back. So I think like many companies nowadays have these tools, but one of the reasons why I'm not scared really, because I know that we have to remember we are the context bearers. Like we're people who know the context and can connect how the user interacts with the product and what is happening actually under the hood. We are people connecting that, and just giving that tool to someone doesn't solve anything, to be honest. It's like actually like one of the examples, it's the same as giving someone a Figma link to a design system and saying, oh, but you're a PM or you like I don't know, on a sales team and you want to do a quick mockup, just use a design system. But the person never worked with Figma. It's going to be really helpful. Not really. It's going to be very confusing and the person will come up with like a really broken visual thing because they don't know what component is. I think it's the same thing for us. And that's why I think we're more than safe for now. But one thing, I might be yapping too much on this specific point, but I keep thinking about something we need to talk about all, not just me and you, is the acceptance of the like mediocre quality of content decisions and product decisions, design decisions. So like if we give this tool to stakeholders and the tool produces content, and if the person looking at the final content, like us, understands that it's not a good output, good. We can fix it. We can explain that we should be the person overseeing the tool. We should be the person working on that. We cannot be laid off, for instance, or something like that. But the thing is, if this, like the team of stakeholders don't really understand what is the difference between good content and what is the difference between good UX and bad UX, they will accept like a medium quality and they will lay people off. They will have linear teams. They will go that way because for them it's going to be, we're going to be like something I heard all the time in a recent year. We're going to experiment with this. It's going to be very far from ideal content. We're going to use some tool. It's going to be like a very quick mock-up. We will just put it in front of the user. And if we have a positive thing going there, like users like it or like they interact with it, but it's not perfect, we will later iterate on that. We will do 5 more experiments where we iterate and make it better, which is kind of like, it makes sense, but I'm not a big fan of putting really like meh content and designs in front of the user just because it's fast and we can fix it later, because it's not always fixed later, to be honest.
So what you're saying is the time now is for more evangelism, not less.
I think so, but like something else I wanted to touch on today besides evangelism was, I think we struggle as a competence, and not only content design as well, generally. I think somewhat like one of your guests previously said that as well in the last few episodes, is that we need to have a conversation as a competence publicly on like agreeing how we want to move. Obviously, like it's not like having citizens in the state to vote, right? Like we cannot make it happen. But there might be maybe a possibility to have a broader conversation between the leaders, somewhere like a panelists and conferences and stuff, like places to talk about this, where we want to go. Because what I'm seeing in some companies, from like what my friends are telling me, what I see on LinkedIn, is that people are trying to kind of one up each other. They're trying to, oh, and I developed this, which is really cool. But I think people don't think about what it means for the competence. Like, for instance, if there is a person who is constantly creating a buzz around, actually, we as content designers have to code more and not just make some changes. Actually, we need to be, let's say, all content designers from now on, all good content designers have to know what MCP server is, have to know how to code and make changes on GitHub, and also maybe mostly do prompt engineering. But what if there is a big chunk of people who are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want this to become what content design is. And I'm afraid of like, because obviously for stakeholders, it sounds great. Like if you're a content designer publicly inside the company, outside the company, constantly saying like, yeah, actually, I think prompt engineering is the way to go. This is the key thing that content designers have to do. And I feel like the more those people have following, sort of like, and the more they evangelize those decisions, is going to become the reality for everyone. And many people might not really agree with that. And I think that's something that happens inside design overall that kind of, I wouldn't say scares me, but concerns me. I think there is no proper conversations of like, let's see, what do we love about our craft and we want to continue doing? What really we don't want to lose just because like one person or like a small group of people want to do it differently and change it completely for the whole competence. Like you mentioned before that you had like an idea for an article maybe to make later. I also had an idea recently about like, I want to talk to people and see what outside of LinkedIn, what do they like to do in terms of craft and really don't like. And to write an article, which basically like the working title is, do you really like your job? Because I think many designers who give up like 70% of what they're doing, and they're saying it's so great. So I have design system, I connected this thing and it creates designs for me. And I always have a question. Okay, let's take a step back. Didn't you like doing that stuff? Like for me, for instance, in design, I actually like that. And maybe for me, it's quite stressful to lose that. And if we lose that, what are we doing exactly? And for those people who are really like pushing the idea of we have to give up 80% of what we're doing now and focus on explaining to agents what we want from them, I'm like, cool, but you basically changed the job to be a manager of 10 agents. And my question is, did you like doing design, or did you really like always just hope that there will be a day where you'll be managing people and telling them what to do and they will be designing for you?
This is a really intelligent point. You've articulated it really well. As you're talking, the thing that my mind went to with that, with your point there, was cinema. Because I see all of these people online posting all of these technical demos that show I prompted this into this video model and now look, it created something that looks like a Marvel movie or whatever. First of all, it doesn't. It looks like shit.
It never does.
It never does. It never looks good. And then, but I'm also thinking about that in comparison to, so someone like Steven Spielberg, who he famously edits in camera. So he will show up on the day of the filming. He won't have a shot list. He'll just be like, okay, how are we going to film this today? All right, so yeah, I'm going to put the camera here, and then actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to do this. So he figures it out through the process of doing it, and that's how you get Schindler's List. Like, I don't know if you get Schindler's List through prompting, give me the best possible shot list that you can find. You know what I mean? And so I think, yeah, I think you touched on something really important there, and I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about putting the Lego plane back together. It's like, okay, well, what bits do we want to keep when we're
Yeah.
rebuilding it? Because and it's funny because like when you speak to people who are starting to work with AI, the natural thing that you start building in content is some sort of assistant or some sort of linter or something like that to check against a style guide. And the first thing you realize is, okay, you need rules and guidelines and documentation in order to judge against. And in order to do that, you need a defined voice that has those rules embedded in it. So I think that's one thing that will always remain.
Yeah.
But to your point, like I think that yeah, there might be a, and I think I wouldn't say I'm guilty of this, but it's something that I'm thinking about a lot too, because you know we've started with education about some technical foundations for content designers, and we constantly have to ask ourselves when we're creating it, like, okay, why? Like, why would
Mm.
someone need to do this? The idea is not to be able to edit code; it's be able to edit code in order to show better
Yeah.
content to the user. Like that
Yeah.
always has to be the end goal. So, yeah, I think you're right.
Absolutely. And I think cinema is a good example because I love cinema, and like actually it's a whole big topic I think about how cinema helped me in my life better understand cultures and like move around and work in different countries and create content because I'm kind of heavily involved in like movies, not just from US for instance or UK, but like many different kind of regions. But I wanted to also give an example of similar to what you said. I might butcher the name because it's a Danish name, but there is a director, Nicholas Winding Refn, who
Hmm.
created the Neon Demon, and he created a few more movies. The thing is, like when I was watching those movies, I was always like, he works great with lighting, and he works great with color, and he has this like really powerful, like deep red and blue colors. I was always like,
Hmm.
wow, what is the idea here? Like, why is he doing that? Like such an interesting visual language. And then I saw an interview with him, and he said, I'm partially colorblind. And I actually learned that
Mm.
accidentally when my wife was buying shoes, and she's like, do you like this red shoes or this shoes? And he's like, they're both exactly the same red. And she's like, no, they're not, absolutely different. And the thing is that the brightness and like the deepness of those colors actually comes because of that. Because he's like, for me to see that the way I want to see it, I need to dial it up. So for you, it's going to be a bit different. And I'm thinking about if he was just working with AI and telling AI, can you make it an acceptable red and blue for people who don't have problems with seeing all the colors, just to make sure that the public, like everyone else who goes to the cinema, sees it the way he would see it without tuning it up. It's going to be completely different. It's going to be a different director, I think, overall after that. And it's, yeah, I don't know. It actually reminds me of that as well.
I love
But
that analogy.
in terms of like what we are, why we need something, like what it helps us achieve. Yeah, I think it's a key question people need to ask, because I know many companies, they want to get more productive and more output. I think one of the articles I read recently was from Intercom, where they were talking about how they have like parts of their workflows are automated now and how they use AI. And I think there was something they were talking about how one of the metrics or like one of the projects they have is that everything should be 2x. Like your output as a person working on like in design needs to be
Mm.
2x with what you had before. And for me, it's a bit of a dangerous thing because I do understand,
Mm.
like knowing how big the Intercom is, and I know people from Intercom, content designers, great people. I'm sure they have proper guardrails for that, or like limitations in terms of this metric, like so not just blindly doing more. But I still think it's a bit of a dangerous thing where people are focusing on, oh, we have AI tools and we need to focus on how much output we have. But they don't ask themselves why we need more output, or like, what does it solve for us really? That we can ship more features, yeah, but what is the quality of those features? So I think it's incredibly important to remember that.
Do you have any advice for people right now? Because we've talked about a lot of things about like not sort of blindly following the hype, looking at the types of skills that you can develop, thinking carefully about what we're going to take on. I think for a lot of people, they feel a little lost right now. Like that we've sort of moved past as I said earlier, we've moved past this phase where for a lot of people they were scared that they might lose their jobs. I still realize that there is a lot of fear for people out there, but I sort of think we've moved past like the initial phase, and now it's really about like more about like, okay, these tools are here now, prove you can use them. Um, just wondering if you have any advice for people.
I think it's going to be a bit of a different advice for like depending on your situation. Like for instance, if you are out of job and you're looking for a new job, I think my biggest advice is that there is no way around it. If you want to get more opportunities, you have to experiment on your own with the tools and see what you can do. And just the same as I was teaching a while ago, and I was explaining to my students that it's very often not even a problem if you don't really have at the beginning of your career, you don't have a project that is real. Like if you can show me all the processes that you used there and it's your pet project and you have an audience of 10 friends, but you did the proper research and you can showcase how you did this, you made all the decisions and you created some low fidelity prototypes and can showcase good content design thinking, it's still enough. Same here. Like if you're out of job and you don't have a company you work at and you understand that more jobs are asking for AI curiosity and like showcase what you did with AI, you can still do it even if you don't have a job right now. I'm not even talking about like freelance stuff. You can have your own pet project where you can experiment with that and you can put it in portfolio and showcase like how you're kind of keeping up with the modern times, and you can find good use cases for AI. And for those who are at some companies right now, like doing some job and they face this push for like, show us how you can use AI. I actually would say that it's not that scary if someone is saying like, show me how you can use AI. It's just that like, you need to make sure that you ask yourself a question. Okay, I will be experimenting with how my team can use AI, but can we focus on solving problems for us or like for engineers or for product designers? Or do you want to focus on just showing as many use cases as possible, even if we don't really think it's helpful? Like for instance, if you want to create a tool that you fit guidelines into it and it can create some sort of like ad hoc copy, great. Just make sure that you explain what are the limitations of that tool. Make sure you make this tool work for you and not really like substitute you. But something that is maybe the most important thing I can say is, and it's really easy to say and not that easy to do, but yeah, companies and stakeholders will throw at you many ideas of like, this is the new tool, use it, or like, this is the new process and you just have to adapt to that. It doesn't really mean you have to accept all of that as like, yeah, definitely, because stakeholders told me to go now and make at least 10 GitHub commits this month. It doesn't mean you definitely have to do this. I know it's easy to say, but you have to maybe like I think as a content design team, it will be too small, but as a design team, you have to align on what is the vision within the company, what other designers think on how you want to utilize AI, and then sort of like go as one front, not try to compete how, let's say, product design is using AI, how research is utilizing AI and content design, but have like a one line that you stick to, like, okay, we have our limitate, like we have our no's, like we definitely have red flags that we don't want everyone in our design competence to become a software engineer overnight. We can make some changes, but it doesn't become our day-to-day job. And I think the key thing here is to be able to explain to stakeholders why you're saying no to some things, like let's say too much coding, and stuff like that. You'll need to showcase why it's not useful. For instance, like where your time will be more valuable and why. So like presenting and showing what you're doing and how product benefits more from that work, other than going and trying to figure out how to make those 5-10 commits to GitHub this year, this month, which will be mostly maybe fixing capitalization in the checkout flow, which is not going to affect that much. So I think now more than ever have to negotiate, like kind of, politicians, I guess, like showcasing what works, what will not work to our stakeholders, and show them where you bring value and where you'll be just wasting your time. Because it kind of also conveniently ties into what I said before about people sometimes either blindly accepting what being thrown at them in terms of tooling and how to work, or being actually at the forefront of this change just because you want to showcase that you're such a big AI voice in the industry, and you're defining what our competence is for the next 5 years. Like, be careful with that. That's my advice, maybe.
Yeah. It's do you want to be known for using AI, or do you want to be known for your craft? That's the real
and
question.
Maybe also ask the question that I asked before, like try asking yourself, do you even like your job? It's a really good question, like I know that in this economy, in this world, like for instance, I'm an immigrant that's on a visa, and for me, even if I tomorrow woke up and said, you know what, content design is done, I'm over, I'm leaving, not that I can really do that tomorrow. So I know people are like limited in that regard, but at the same time, this question can help you at least understand if you say, actually, I don't like what I'm doing day to day, and then you can investigate what exactly you don't like. Maybe your company decides that all that content designers are doing now is just checking content that is produced by a tool, and you have no strategic work and you don't do anything. Then maybe you have either change the company, or, as I said before, like you need to switch the direction in which you're going. Like maybe go closer to product design, UX design, UI design, or maybe go closer to engineering if you like it more. Or maybe leave and find a company where they're looking for a classic content designer, or like generalist is doing everything, which would be better for you. So this is like a really easy question, but it's very painful to ask yourself, like, do you like what you're doing? Do you like what is your job right now?
Yeah. Well, at least you know that you can find a new career prompting terrible AI models to create scenes from Marvel movies.
Yes.
Oleksii, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you online?
Mostly on my LinkedIn, I think. You can also find me on some of the conference, like I will be on the growing content this year. And I'm not sure if the podcast will be out by then. So maybe I'm late about with that. So mostly LinkedIn. I think I'm just there. And all the other links are on LinkedIn. Just go there and follow. Maybe I will post something smart. Maybe I won't. Who knows?
Follow anyway. This has been great. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening. That was my chat with Oleksii. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, if you have any comments, you want to recommend someone to interview, or you just want to yell at me, email me at patrick@uxcontent.com. Please don't yell at me. If you want to enroll in anything at uxcontent.com, get 20% off with podcast 20. Until next time, I'll see you around.